Guest today is Don Armand. He's an ex-England international rugby player, a Premiership and European champion who, since his retirement, has dived deep into mindsets, business coaching, development, all of the key topics that we love to talk about on this podcast. So I'm excited to dig a little deeper into Don's backgrounds, his playing career, what that transition has been like after he's retired. Don, thank you for joining me. I think that's an easy starting point. Tell us, that life that you had as a professional athlete. A lot of people look at it from the outside and they just see you on the pitch, but there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thanks very much for having me on. It's an interesting podcast to be on, obviously, because we've had a bit of history, and I'm excited for what we're going to talk about today. But yeah, I suppose starting off there is like, what's it like off the field? And that's where I think it gets interesting. But I almost equate it the same as what we all go through in life, is like everyone has their off the field. They just don't realize you have an off the field. And that's what I'm experiencing now. So our job is on the field. Your job is on the field as a business woman, person, man, and then when we go home, most people relax and do nothing. And actually, there's a whole lot of stuff that I think needs to get done off the field and able to get our on the field performance better. And that's kind of what I've realized coming into retirement. You're obviously stuck and you've got all your structures and you get told what to do. And I often equate to like with Gas, the other business with that PDF is I say that we all essentially are high performing athletes. We just don't realize it. You've got to make sure you see life as a performance. Like, you've got to get up and no one's telling you what to do necessarily. You technically don't have any consequences. You can go and live on a beach if you wanted to, but you're making a choice to not do that. And within that choice, people are telling you what to do within a reason. And actually, we're going to talk about freedom here. I know that is about, defining your freedom and what that looks and what you're prepared to do. And I've gone from rugby where you get told, like, I've said this, it sounds weird. It's easier in rugby to perform than it is in life because the consequences are more like direct. If I chose not to get, and this is the same, that's what I'm trying to say. And like in your work, if you wake up at 7 and you decide, I'm going to sleep in, you're going to get a warning at work. But with rugby, it's like, I can do that. I'd be late. I'm probably not going to get picked. The team might get let down. There's going to be consequences that happen a lot shorter. Whereas in business, it just takes a lot longer for those consequences to come around sometimes. But the premise is still the same. You're still high performing. You still have to get up. You still have to go. But you have to learn to be more consistent in life, in business. Whereas rugby is like, you've got to be consistent, or any performing sport, but that's only going to last for however your career spans, and someone's always going to tell you what to do. And so that's where we talk about freedom and how I see it. So yeah, I think I started to babble there.
That's fine, because it leads nicely. You've now retired, so you've had all of that structure, to an extent, being told where to be, what to do, when to do it, all of those things for training, nutrition, recovery, match days, everything that goes with it. But you are now in a very different world. What's that transition been like? So you're doing sort of business coaching, as I understand it, and things like that. You have Gas as a side business that as a passion project.
Yeah.
So your main business is taking some of those skills that you've developed from playing into a business environment. But I guess the structure there is very different. It's not necessarily somebody else telling you all the time what it is that you need to do.
Yeah. No, so it's completely different. I now get ultimate freedom because it's my business, it's leadership development stuff. So if I choose to sit and do nothing all day, then I deal with the consequences. But on the same time, if I sit and choose to do 8 hours of super productive work, whatever I put in, I get out. That's what I love about the freedom that I've gotten. So whereas rugby before is I could have had the best preseason in the world. I could have come back the fittest, strongest, most skilled player. But if a coach didn't like maybe something about my temperament, maybe the way I spoke to him or her in a previous engagement, maybe a reputation that they've heard from someone else, right? And this goes for all sports people, is your value is only determined by the person that picks you. Whereas now, yes, I've got to get clients to pick me, and I've got to learn how to sell. But at the end of the day, I know that if I put work into the proposal, if I put work into learning how to sell, and I can sell properly, and I do my research on Philip Ride when I'm coming to talk to you to try and I've got to know your business inside and out. I've got to know your problems. I've got to be able to converse with you. And what I put in, I will more often than not get out. And that for me is freedom. It's the ability to know that, like in life, I know I'm not wasting my time putting all of my effort and energy into something. Whereas rugby is, I've seen guys come and do this, and come in so fit, they sacrifice family, they sacrifice friends, they sacrifice a lot. And the coach just goes, how cognitive bias comes in, or they just make an assumption and they stick to it. And that person's value plummets. And I go, that's what I want to get away from. Everything has a swing in life, right? I'm trying to develop this master the swing type thing, which I know you'll get, is like, I've got the freedom, but with that freedom comes a lot more responsibility. I could just go, I'm going to get a 9 to 5, and I get less freedom, but actually there's a lot less responsibility. And that's where we'll talk about, like, what does your freedom mean? You can have a 9 to 5 that pays you. You're going to pitch up, you're going to work, but you get your set holidays, you get your set time. And in that time, you get your freedom to do what you want. And like you say, perspective is so key.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to hear you say that, because absolutely, some people, they feel comfortable in a 9 to 5. That stability is there. One of the guests that I've interviewed previously, she actually is a spiritual advisor, and some of her clients is like, for them, freedom is having the stability of a job, but knowing that there's room for growth, so that they can develop as an individual within that role and support the community, or train new staff members, or whatever it may be. That for them is a level of freedom. And that's where it's interesting to hear different people's perspectives on freedom, to hear you say yourself, you know what, actually, I was in a very structured environment when I was playing. Now I have a lot more freedom in terms of time, how I use my energy and my focus. But it's also interesting to hear you comment that is what freedom is for you right now. It's not going and sitting on the beach. It's not, buying the fancy cars or working towards that or anything else. So again, for people listening, watching, just to be able to say, actually, it doesn't matter what freedom means to me. That's right.
Yeah.
Other people have their view of freedom, and that's okay for them. I shouldn't feel like I need to mirror that or try and chase the same things, because those activities, those experiences, those places, they may not sit right with
feed
me.
your energy. Yeah, I agree. And I actually said this, I think it might be on LinkedIn, is about one person did an interview, and I said it depends how you define success. And this goes with freedom, is like, you could look at the balance sheet of gas or any other business and go, it's not that high. They don't earn the millions. But I said, but at the moment with my business at Don Armand, is I get to spend all morning with my kids, and I get to drop them off. And then I can come in and I do my work from 9 to 3, and then I go and pick my kids up, and I spend all afternoon. I take them to sports. I'm very present with them. And I'm very well aware that halts the development of my business and the effect that it can have. But it's given me the freedom to spend time with my children. And I've heard this, is you'll never regret the time you spent with family, but you always go to regret the time you spend without them. And so it's like, well, if I'm going to listen, if I'm curious, if I teach, open, above the line growth mindset, I've got to listen to those that have gone before me. And those that have gone before me are telling me, spend time with your kids because you'll never regret it. So therefore, I'm not worried about earning an extra $5,000 in the month. I'm more worried as if I'm getting my way at this stage and I'm developing so that in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, things start to take off. That's great, because that's where my focus is. But, for now, my freedom, my success lies with how I am towards my family, because I believe in legacy. And, it's that whole thing of like, I'm planting seeds now that I might not be able to sit in the shade of those trees. I'm making sure that my children's character at a time where they learn the most in terms of developing their brain is through things that I speak to them about, and they are very aware of their influences. They're very positive in how they look at things. They can always realize that they have a choice. All those things I want them ingrained, so that when they become adults, they don't then start the struggle of learning that. And those are very important to me. So
yeah, amazing to hear. I'm doing research currently for my book, as I'm recording this, I'm writing the book. And that's been pretty much the blanket response that's come back is like, I would love more time with family.
Yeah.
So there's a big driver there for people to say, okay, yes, freedom can look like different things, but I guess for the majority of people, there is that undercurrent of family and having that time, because once it's not there, well, it's not there. There's nothing you can do about it. So try and get it while you can. Touching on the mindset piece that you mentioned there and the work that you do, what does that look like? There are many different ways of, thinking about mindset, slicing it, different models and frameworks. What is the type of thing that you focus on, and how does that support yourself and then, the clients that you work with?
Well, when it comes to mindset, funny enough, we teach this. It's called the high performance triangle, and it's got mindset, structure, skill set. And if you're trying to focus on mindset, you'll get it wrong because it's inconsistent. Life brings its ups and downs, and actually your superpower lies in structure. So you were mentioning structure of rugby, structure of new life now, and I was like, you're singing the tune. If you can recognize the importance of structure, that's the way you create consistency. If you can create consistency, then you understand that you can achieve anything. And you also are very aware when the ups are there and when the downs are there. And so if you can control the mindset, and just by being aware of where it's at certain times, you're then able to manufacture what you want around you and make sure that you don't feel helpless. Because sometimes when you're down, there's nothing you can, you're on the way to work and your tire go flat, and then you miss the meeting. And now you're in a performance spiral. So what are you going to do? If you're relying on mindset, you're like, come on, mind, there's nothing you can do. You're going to stay down there. But if you know what's the importance of structures and you get your structures in place, you can then stop that spiral and then get yourself back up to the midpoint, get back above the line. And you open, you're friendly, you realize, you know what, maybe I was meant to be late for the meeting. Maybe I was meant to have a flat tire because I needed to see how people reacted when I walked in and I was late. Are they going to shrug me off, not even ask the reason why? What type of leadership is that? Are these the people I'm going to work with? Is that so? Like, you can always make gold out of metal, and that's it. So like, mastering the swing, the mindset, the structure, to improve your skill set, to then improve your structure more. I mean, I could do a whole talk on it, and I do, but that's how I base everything, because it allows me to speak a simple language that I can connect with what you're saying just by understanding the structures of it and then building up your way, as well as you understand from my point of view. So yeah, I hope that gives a clear enough view of what I would talk about when it comes to mindset.
Yeah, it's interesting because depending on school of thought, what you read, who you have conversations with, structure there, is that structure as in, and I've just, wanting to unpack this a little bit for the listeners and the viewers as well. Are you talking about structure as in tasks? Are you talking about structure as in behavior? Are you thinking about patterns here in terms of what people do and how they respond to certain situations and trying to break those? What is it that then fits within? I say box, but it's not,
so
not necessarily a box.
Well, in order to think outside the box, you've got to know what the box looks like. So we can talk about the box. No, structure basically is anything that's non-emotive. So when you're trying to control your emotions, which is mindset and motivation, all of that stuff is intrinsic motivation, and like where you are mentally. If you are looking at it from an emotive point of view, there's always going to be an emotion, and that's going to change. Whether you're sad, whether you're happy, it means you're going to look at it from a different point of view. It's going to be inconsistent. Structure would be anything that is non-emotive. It allows you to develop in a way that you don't take offense. Like, if we talk about structures, like what are the processes that I go through in business? Those are structures. To what are my processes behind my proposal system? What are my processes behind selling? When in an organizational sense, those are your structures. What is, do we start at 7 a.m? Do we wear a uniform? What are the things that no matter how you feel, we will be starting at this, we will be doing X, Y, Z. Those are your structures. When you set expectations in terms of roles and leadership, those are you setting the structures out to be able to give the mindset somewhere to start. When it comes to self, you have to know your own identity to have a solid structure within yourself to be able to control your mindset. And that's what I said earlier. Lots of people don't have a strong identity, a strong self identity of who they are, because they don't have structures. So sometimes they get the best of me is coming, I'm really enjoying it. And then in 2 weeks' time, stuff happens, and then suddenly they go, "Oh, you know, I don't really know who I am." It's because mindset is always going to be there. I like every single person. I fully, passionately believe everyone has potential in them. They do, really do. We just don't know how to be consistent with that. Structure is the way to identify how to get our mindsets up and up and up and up. So from an individual point of view, your cold showers, your ice baths, your coffees, all of those things, if you realize they don't take emotion to do them, they just, you identify them as structures. Your intent is to have structures. You can be sick, happy, sad, you'll shower, your cold shower, and then you know that you get something out of it. Your journaling, all of that. So like we're going to talk about mindfulness. What are the structures behind mindfulness? Well, actually, if we want to simplify mindfulness, it's the ability to let your mind free so that you get your racing thoughts off your whiteboard and you can clear it up. So running, yoga, journaling, breath work, sunrises, suns, all of those bits, you can see them as like, oh, they're structures, because within that structure, they allow your mindfulness to then develop. And so you start to be able to identify the basic level of everything that everyone else is telling you to do, and you use one language. So if you've read The Alchemist, it's about like understanding the universal language. So the universal language for me is kind of like structure. It's like, I can talk to you about your business and I'll structure it down to step one, and then I'll understand it, and then we can build it back up. But a lot of people get focused on, say, step 100. Step 100 is very confusing because making your bed to you and me making my bed are two different steps, are two different step 100s. They can have completely different intent. So if we talk about step one, what is step one? What does the structure of that look like? So why are we making our bed? It then has a better meaning. It has a better, you'll start to do it just because you've understood step one. So in your business, you understand why people need you to have strategy, why you've got to look at the environment, why you've got to focus on your leadership skills, and why culture is important. You then start to structure all of these bits. Then you know what to do to develop. So if you've ever had a life coach, a business coach, a leadership coach, they will always, without realizing it, help you structure. They don't do it on purpose because it's just theories, unless they're doing it with intent. But structure is your superpower. So if I say to you, have you used Grow Model before? You understand what it is?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So Grow Model is basically your structure for how you coach a session. What's your goal? What's your realistic options? Or where are you realistically now? So GR. So realistically where you're at right now. I'm writing the book, all this. What are your options? I could fly to the moon. I could get Elon Musk to invest. Any option is available. And then so W is what will you do? If you go into a coaching session and you don't know how to coach, all you do is follow that. You then will get a better session because you have structured the session. Your meetings, you think about any meetings you have now, like we could talk about so many different aspects of structure now. And you then start to go, I can identify structure in other people or in other businesses, and I'm going to adapt them at level one into mine and then build it up. You then realize what you're building up. You realize the importance of, when you're feeling sad, stick to the structures. That will make you consistent. That'll grow your success. So you right now, and you're talking about like the different steps you have to go through for your book. And you're like, I know I'm not going to get it right, but I know if I just get through it, I'm going to be that much closer. That's how structure works, because you stick into your structure, then mindset's got something to work off of it, and you're improving your skill set as you go. When you improve your skill set, i.e. learned experience, you learn more theories, more knowledge, you improve your structure because you have a better understanding, which then improves your mindset, which then just has this infinite cycle. And that's so like, you can't scale a business if you don't structure it up. The same way you cannot scale your mindset or your personality growth if you're not structuring it up. Because in your highest points of stress or pressure, you'll fall down into your highest form of preparation. Preparation is your structure. So I think that answers it.
It does. I also want to go a step further and just get your thoughts and perspective on this. The model that I've created, the 12 chains and the process that I take people through, one of the things that I ask them to sort of identify are their freedom activities. The things that make them feel good that they may not be doing as often as they may want to do, or the things that they want to work towards and have as a part, a regular part of their lives. And I guess if you look at it from or through the lens of structure, having those things in place to say, every month, okay, here's an activity that I'm going to do, or every week, you start to build up those structures around the things that you want to spend your time, your energy, your focus on. it is, I guess, a form of structure in the same way
Yeah,
that
100%.
I have a freedom tracker that says, you know what, we should be tracking all of the people that you don't like spending time with and all of the people that you do like spending time with, and structuring it and keeping a log of all of those things, because it's like, yeah, I fell into a trap. I went to a party. There were all the people that I don't like spending time with. I felt drained afterwards. Okay, let's mark that down. Okay, right, now I have a structure to keep this log, and I can see where I'm making progress, where I'm moving backwards. And so I guess it's structure comes in many different forms.
Yeah. It's everywhere, and you've just got to learn to identify it, and then you know where your mindset. Now you know why writing down the people that drained you, because it reminds you, your mindset, when you're feeling drained, you go back to that structure you wrote down, you're like, oh yes, it's a reminder. And that's the importance of it. So yeah, I think a thought came to me when you're talking about your freedom of like the little things you do, and I can't remember it now. I think it's important to identify those little things that give you energy, because there's a few things I'm working on, like even so my blackboard, I've got I want to become an energy state expert. So it's like identifying, where you get your energy from, what you allow in, based off books of, habit stacking. Habit stacking is identifying structures and what's your keystone structure that allows the rest to work off. Because when you've got your first bit of structure in there, it will then set off your mindset to do the rest. And that's really just a good explanation of how structure works.
Yeah, I've reread James Clear's Atomic Habits, where he talks about habit stacking. I think habit stacking is from BJ Fogg at Stanford University.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's again something that I've used and I've found useful.
Yeah,
being able to add in new habits and new structures to my life and certain things that I want to do. So we talked about structures and how that plays into mindsets. From the perspective of, read the short version of the book, and the chains and things like that, I take people through 3 levels and the different chains. I guess to an extent that in itself is a structure. Being able to say, okay, here are the things that are potentially easiest to work through first. How do you break the knowledge chain and gain the knowledge that you need to move forwards or towards the things that you want to achieve? Looking at convenience, how do you change your behavior around that and not give in to convenience? Okay, can you put new structures in place, signposts of what to do, what not to do? I guess, the easiest and simplest way to look at all of that then is structures. And if we look at life through that lens, actually we can reframe everything. And it's about how do we build the best structure for us to achieve what we want to achieve.
Yeah.
Moving on from that then, the next topic that I'd like to touch on briefly, you have spoken about the freedom that you've got now and the time that you can spend with family, which is amazing, being able to see your children grow and support them and have those conversations and the shared experiences and things like that. Given that you have retired from rugby, you're now in a business, you have a passion project, you have your family.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on, your freedom list, your as I do the tail grids, the time, the activities, the location, the experiences that you want to continue working towards? What does that look like? And actually, do you see any conflict between where you are currently and those things?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be conflict though, isn't there? I say never judge your future by your present. And you can't, I always say, never limit your future because there's no rules there. And somehow you'll make a plan to get it to where you want to be. It's just the only thing that life brings at you is time pressure. As soon as there's time pressure, then it starts to make you a bit stressed. So a good example is training for a marathon. I did the London Marathon and I didn't have any time that I was aiming. I'm going to complete it and I'm not going to walk. That was fine. To get this performance in the back of my mind, maybe we should go for a time. You could see it started to bring this different, maybe we should, what if I'm not going to? All of those other things started to come into your mind. And then I was like, no, I'm gonna set out what I read. And this is the importance of like vision and direction and goals, and why you have to redirect yourself back to your original goals, is because life will always bring something that's going to take you off course. And I had to keep reminding myself, no, I'm doing it because I want this experience to be fun. I want it to be something I want to go back to. So now I'm doing another one, and I will be doing it for time. I want to see how well I go because I get more time to train and everything like that. But I do think, like there's always going to be conflict between where I am now and where I want to be. But that's the whole point, is life will bring conflict even when you're at the place, and there's going to be something stopping you from getting it even more perfect. So yeah, I mean, where I am at the moment is far off where I want to be, but I know that if I work towards it a little bit every day and I don't rush it, my foundation's going to be a lot stronger. So I'm not going to fall far down when anything does come in the way, if that makes sense. So I'm happy with slow progress, because I think slow progress allows you to have less holes that you've left behind, or less cracks in the foundations. And that's even why I was willing to not push gas, because there were obviously lots of opportunities to push it, but you got to push it cheap and against my original goal. Then I was willing to, I'd rather just slow it right down than speed it up and make sure that it grows the same way that someone else does. But then I have to sacrifice my values and my mission and my purpose with it. So I'd rather just slow it down and build it properly. And yeah, I suppose when we go to your tail thing, like it is exactly the same. Like where I want to be, I want to have freedom of choice too, freedom of clients, freedom of money, where I can give back and not worry about how much that can affect my family and all that kind of stuff. Like I want to help communities. I want to help our community here. I want to just play a part, if that makes sense, because legacy doesn't only apply to me and my family, but it applies to, everyone as a society. That's why gas has the potential to have a global impact, because it's online. When I say global, and you're then helping out a big part of society, the people that get stuck behind the computers because of mental health issues. There's ways to make sure that you balance it out, and I think a lot of that drips into society, kids, parents, all, like there's a bigger legacy at play, but that means you're going to have solid foundations to have a proper legacy. So yes, there are obstacles in the way, and that's okay. Like I've accepted them. The more you resist, the more they persist. So
as the saying goes, then I guess being comfortable with discomfort and still taking one step at a time.
Yeah. And I think Andrew Huberman said it, and this is kind of something that you always come up with these ideas. You're like, oh, that makes sense. And then you hear someone else that's like way more knowledgeable. You've written a book and they speak about the same concept. And you're like, oh, it's been around for a while. But then it just means that you understand what they're trying to say. And Huberman said in one of his podcasts that he said, like, you've got to lean into, like, you've got to accept stress and want it to then actually have growth from it, as opposed to when stress comes, go, I don't know if I can deal with stress, because then you're going to shrink in it. And I've always had this, like, if stress comes to you, you've got to have a positive mindset towards it, because whether you have positive or negative mindset, the stress is still going to be there. So what he's telling you is science is saying you have a choice on how you receive what's coming towards you. And if you choose to lean into it, you will grow and you will be better for it. If you choose to receive it in a negative way and let it break you down, which is easy to do, like I've got the, choose wisely, attitude's a choice, happiness is a choice, everything's a choice. And if you make the short-term gain for the long-term loss, or the long-term gain and the short-term loss, like you've got to balance those things out and realize that choices are hard. Like happiness is hard. Being happy is hard. But being sad is also hard, because no one likes to be sad. And why we don't like to be sad is because humans are not, like, we're not innately sad beings. We want to connect. We want to give back. We want to be a part of something bigger, because mirror neurons, if you want to go science, like there's lots of ways to look at it, the way that we all connect, and we don't even know why. So like women living in the same house, their cycles all sync up, but you can't explain it. But there's a level of connection that we can't see, we can't explain, but it's there. And so it's just about understanding, like, we're connecting in so many different ways, and we've got to keep pushing on it. So absolutely. Sorry, I veered off track. Off track there.
But that's perfect. I think it's a great point to end on, to say we all have choices. There are things that are coming our way, and it's about how we respond to those things, how we build structures to support them so that actually we can lean in, and that we can grow, rather than hide, be small, and just accept whatever comes our way.
Yeah, I think Mo Gaudat, I always lean back on this one because he's obviously Mo Gaudat is way more articulate than I am. He's thought about these things a lot. He was the Google X CEO, and he said he was talking about happiness with Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO. And he said, when it rains and you want it to rain, you're happy. When it rains and you don't want it to rain, you're sad. He said, but rain is just rain. We are the ones that choose how we see it. And he said, happiness is the same thing. Life is the same. You've just got to know that you have a choice. And if you know you've got a choice, then you've got a bit of hope. And yeah, leave it on that.
Perfect. Thank you, Don, for joining me today.
Thanks very much for having me, Philip.